More on the chaos, the craziness going on in Los Angeles. One of the things I've been talking about all day, and I've been talking about it for a while because the debate is, should we have military? I say no to military. Now, I'm not going to say no to having the National Guard because I think you're going to protect certain things, in particular federal things. But I continue to go back to this, and I've said this over and over. And I'm a big states' rights guy. I don't want the government rolling down, having military on the ground in Los Angeles because first of all, the optics are awful. Secondly, I'm going to point something out to you because a lot of people have been talking about this today, especially with me, because I worked in the riots in 1992 because of my mother's company. I was in the riots. I was actually downtown. I was in South Central, several different places, doing a lot of stuff during the riots in 92. And I will tell you this, it was awful. It was horrible. It was 1,000 times bigger than this. This was not the same thing. There was unrest everywhere. People were pissed. That was containment. This is childlike behavior. My buddy Matt and I got into it a little bit today talking about it's an insurrection. I said, it's not an insurrection. I said, it is. I said, it's no more an insurrection than you can sit here and talk about January 6th, which is always the go-to with the Democrats. I was laughing about that. Even today, Nancy Pelosi brought up January 6th. Like, that's the thing that killed the dinosaurs and all of the stuff. But I will tell you, there's some serious issues with the way that LA has handled this. LA has allowed this to get out of control, and that is a them problem. Now, you protect federal buildings if they are bringing massive amounts of force where you're completely overwhelmed. That's, maybe have that conversation. But that is for the mayor and that is for the governor to have. And that's an important thing. I am a freedom guy. I'm a conservatarian. I always joke and call myself that. But I can sit here and say, no, I don't want the military there. But if you want to protect the federal side of things, I got zero problems with that. Because these blue cities in particular, go look at Portland and Seattle, a lot of them have allowed stuff to get out of control for too long. And they've allowed what I call these toddlers. And he and I were talking about it was Antifa wants to overthrow. I said, Antifa's a bunch of toddlers. That's what they are. They're a bunch of kids who don't want to grow up and have any responsibility. A vast majority of them have got a college education that cost them well into the six figures. I'm sorry, anarchy it's kind of hard to go, yeah, I'm behind your anarchy. By the way, how's that gender studies degree working out for you? I mean, these are people who are doing everything they can in the summer. It's summertime. So when it's summertime, it's the perfect time to go out and protest and throw a fit. But I continue to ask the question, where's the mayor? Where's the governor? Bass and Newsom, you've not done squat. You've bitched, whined, and moaned. And by the way, you, in a weird way, you're hoping that this, through Trump going in and deciding to put in the military, but most importantly, the show of force around there quails all this because you can yell, oh my God, look what he did. And at the same time go, whew, that guy saved us from our city burning down. And it's not going to. It's a very small area. As I was trying to explain to people today, well, do you let people get away with that? It's a very small area. It is people act like it is taken over the entire city. Most of my family lives in Los Angeles. I was just talking to my uncle, who's currently in Los Angeles. Normally he's here, but he's at tonight he is at a graduation for his wife's niece. And I said, how was it? I go, did you get attacked by anybody? He goes, no. I said, is it crazy out there? He goes, no. I said, no. They get night. They get a little bit crazier. People come out. These are toddlers. It's not an insurrection. It's not even anarchy. It is play. Now, it's awful what they're doing and the way they're acting and this insanity of these people who are being pushed into an area where some people out there, in particular, the immigrant community, whether they're here legally or illegally, they're stuck in a position where they're seeing a bunch of people come out who they think they're not really helping you. They're not interested in helping you. They're interested in breaking shit. They're interested in throwing a fit. They're interested in doing that. They're not interested in the outcome. Oh, we want to get rid of ICE and all of the stuff. They're not interested in the outcome. They don't care about that. That's not a thing they care about. They care more about causing crazy shit to happen, evoking reaction, getting all kinds of stuff for their Insta and their TikTok and stuff like that. They're really not interested in whether or not you're there and you're trying to make a living and keeping your head down and just trying to survive. You're just right now, we can't really do anything about Palestine. And so this is the new thing for us to do. This is our summer of chaos and craziness. Rather than Palestine, we're going to do this because Greta's got Palestine handled. Where's the mayor? Where's the governor? This is on you, Sean Spicy Spicerson.
And the media is continuing to gaslight us about the what happened and how it happened. So there's two aspects about the conversation. There's the reality of the law enforcement piece of this, which is our goal, any goal, whether you're a mayor, a governor, or the president of the United States, the number one goal of any elected official is to protect their people. That's full stop. If you don't have that, nothing else matters. And so to your point about the role of individuals, the chief of police, we talked about him earlier, is on tape, on record, saying it got out of control. We weren't ready. There should be no further discussion. We should be talking about protecting people. And yet, and again, it talks about Donald Trump escalating. He didn't do anything. He did his job and his obligation to protect the American people and federal agents and assets. Full stop. And the idea that we're talking about him escalating it, Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass failed their people. That's an unequivocal truth.
Here.
And I don't believe, and I think the idea of the conversation is first and foremost for all the discussion in the media about facts and misinformation and whatever. This is another failure of the media to provide the American people with the truth as to what's really happening.
Amen. And I agree with Spicy Spicerson. And by the way, that was Mark Halperin, who does, I think, arguably the best job in all of this stuff. When it comes to politics, a straight shooter across the board in so many of these things. Has a bunch of people on from the right and the left, and the average person like you and I can go on there and participate, which I think is incredible. But this is a job for the city and the state, and you've decided to allow this stuff to happen. Gavin, you're running around screaming and yelling, hoping he arrests you. Oh, Tom Homan, come arrest me. Why? Because it'll be great for your brand. It elevates you. You can raise money. You can be the king martyr, right? You weren't just arrested. You hope Tom Homan himself and Trump come. They land in Air Force One and they take you away and they take you to Guantanamo Day because it'll raise your brand. That's the shit you're hoping for. Quietly, you're hoping that Trump squashes this, you can bitch and moan about it and look like a hero, and he can put out the fire. You have failed your people. So in 1992, and I'll relive this a little bit. So I did work in the riots, and it was scary as shit. I will tell you that. And the insanity of what was going on then, and everybody thinks it was the Rodney King beating. It wasn't. It was the acquittal of the 4 officers that led to the riot. And the way that the police handled it there, remember, this is nothing new for LAPD. LAPD at that time, what did they do? Well, they didn't really do anything. And it started with the attack of, in South Central, and people are angry and pissed running around. And then the attack of Reginald Denny and the throwing of the brick off his head. And we all remember that horrible thing. And the cops really not doing anything at the time. And then it was more contained. And then it went on and on and on. And eventually it got out of control. I don't think this is going to happen because the difference was that wasn't an isolated thing. That was happening in several cities across LA. So it's a massive place. And I don't think people understand. If you live outside of California, you've never been there. LA County itself has more people than 40 states. Just think about that for a second. They've got more people than 42 states, something like that, some ridiculous amount. It is massive. This is a small area of outside agitators, for the most part, who are doing this for the gram, for their thing, to run around, scream and yell, and to say, look at all the great stuff I protest. So they can tell their kids one day, if they have kids, oh, I was just like, this is the stuff I was protesting, anti-war. This is bullshit. So don't buy into it. You failed, Mayor. You failed, Governor. You failed again, and you'll continue to fail because you're not interested in actually doing anything. It's more about the look for you than anything else. And that's the reality of it. And then you've got New York, where Mayor Adams came out today and said, don't even think about it. If you want to protest, protest. If you want to march, march. If you want to come and do crazy shit and break a bunch of stuff and cause hell and havoc, guess what? That's going to end quickly for you because that's the way you handle things. Watching the police in Los Angeles have to go under the overpass as their cars are getting smashed and thinking to themselves, the hell are you guys doing? How did you allow this to get this far? How did you? How did you allow this to get to this situation? I mean, it's, it boggles the mind. You shouldn't have, and again, it's a federal issue. The feds came in. Should they have maybe said, hey, we're going to come in. We're not looking for help, but definitely be aware. I'm not quite sure what the conversation was, but then you allowed it to escalate throughout the day. And then through the weekend, it permeates, it gets louder and louder. And as it starts to get dark, you know what happens in situations like that. New York came out, Mayor Adamson said, no, that shit isn't going to go down. Not in New York City.
Aaron, one of the largest protests that this city has seen in quite some time. This protest has stretched for blocks from each side of the avenues, from 6th Avenue. We're now on Hudson Street, and we've been going for about nearly 2 hours. And you can see people are holding signs saying ICE out of New York City. We've seen flags of Mexico. We've seen the Palestinian flag, and really just a convergence of different issues and different concerns that people here in New York City have.
So as I'm watching this entire time, what did he talk about? Flags of everywhere but America. You look there, I didn't see any American flags. I saw none of that. I saw none of the stuff that you think, you bust your ass to come here. You work hard to come here. Your goal is to come here. Even if you're not here legally, you understand the risk, A, that at any given time there could be a knock on the door and that something could happen where you end up getting in trouble. The reality is, you seem to want to be who you are from where you were. You just want to do it here on our dime in our country. And if that's the way you feel, I don't have any time for that. You don't read the room. Vast majority of Americans, I think it was 56%, in the last CBS poll, said what? We're in favor of mass deportation. Doesn't mean you get rid of everybody, no. But you can't have a conversation to get the bad ones out. And if you're going to spend the entire time fighting any opportunity to get this under control, I remind you, for the last 4 years, you guys in the Democratic Party in particular, jack the pooch. This is on you. You allowed untold millions to come across the border, said you could do nothing about it. And lo and behold, the reaction is this. This is a you problem in a major way when it comes to that. Now, it doesn't mean we can't figure something out, and I think conversation needs to be had by all parties. But this is the battle that Trump is leaning into, because this is what he does well. He has been about the border. He's not changed his mind about the border. He continues to talk about the border and immigration, and this is something that he can lean into. And your best bet at this moment in time is, we should do, burn down cities. That's not going to go this well as it did in 2020 and the summer of love. That's not going to happen again. That isn't, nor should it, which again was a nightmare. And this isn't going to happen. And I know they've got protests set this week, and I know they've got protests set over the next couple days in certain places. And I'm sure LA's not going to, calm down, tonight or tomorrow. But know that is not as big as they're making it out to be. But also know that the media is yanking your chain when they talk about the escalation. It should never have gotten to this point. It's like petulant children, right? I've got a 6-year-old. If you give her an inch, she's going to take a yard. She's going to take a mile. And you've allowed these people to do all of that, to throw fits, to break things, to threaten people, to just cause hell and havoc in an area in which you live, and you're not really doing anything. And quietly, you're hoping, I hope that Trump can maybe squash this down. My buddy Ken, the weather wizard, I call him, he and I were talking about this day, and he's like, man, they got to be hoping that they freaking crush this thing, right? Because then they can go, oh my God, life is horrible. Look how bad he is. And then realistically go, that's great. Like, he stopped our city from being a hot mess in certain areas, which is already a hot mess in several areas, as we already know. Speaking of Trump, he's got that big... Look, I love our military. They're amazing. Do I think we need a giant parade that just happens to fall on Trump's birthday. Does anybody else find that odd this weekend? I mean, to the tune of about 45 million. Well, they say it's 30, could be up to 45, which means it'll be 100 million. Do I think we need one of those in DC? No, it's got a very little feel of Kim Jong-un in the May Day parades. Do we have any of those missiles that are going to all be pointed up to the sky? I have no idea. But for, the whole thought of we're broke AF as the big, beautiful bill is out there, and we're starting, people, well, they're paying little attention to actually what's going on with the bill. But the reality is I'm not quite sure we need this. He's very excited about it. And I love America as much as anybody, but I'm not quite sure. But I'm not a parade guy. And I said that. I said, look, in fairness, all right, in fairness, I've always hated parades. I think they're stupid. I think I tried to get a parade a couple years ago. I said, how about this? We changed the parade that we have in one of the cities I was in. I said, we'll do the parade where they stand still and you can run by as fast as you can or drive by. So that way you can be done whenever you want to be done, as opposed to being just stuck in a situation where people are coming by. Because I always find parades to be silly. That's just me. And to the tune of God knows what this is going to cost. And it's interesting to see the roads. As I was reading several of these things, the roads they're worried about, even though reinforcing some of them with metal, are they going to be able to handle the weight of some of these vehicles? So we'll see. I just got somebody hit me up on the Insta talking about what it was like in the riots in 92. I'll tell you, the riots in 92, like I say, were chaos. And when I was out there and I was working for my mother, my mother's company had huge contracts with, it was a glazing company, so glass, with at the time it was Pick and Save, and it was Southland Corporation, which is 7-Eleven and Food for Less and all of these places. So we would go out and we would board these buildings up. And I just remember we're in Long Beach and we're at a Pick and Save. And the Pick and Save it's odd. We get there and we're starting to put stuff up. We're banging it up. And I'm here. I'm back from Europe. My knee has been injured. My mom's like, you got to go help because we're shorthanded. Obviously, we didn't know this stuff was going to happen. And this is like a big deal. I said, yeah, I'll go help and stuff. And, it was weird. She goes, you're going to go with so-and-so. And, you guys, here's guns, be careful. And I'm like, it's a little nerve-wracking. So we're out there in Long Beach and we're putting up the first several places we go. It's a disaster. Like they're telling us to come to some places. We went to a 7-Eleven in downtown Long Beach. By the time we got there, it was destroyed. And across the street, the DMV was on fire and you could feel it melting. It was odd that, you would burn down the DMV, but then at the same time, it was the DMV. So we finally go over to this Pick and Save. And which now is Big Lots, but it was Pick and Save at the time. And we're getting everything up. We're on the ladders and we're putting all these huge plywood things up there. And it's a pain in the ass. And in the corner of the parking lot, there's no cars but us and one other car. I think it's like the manager or something. And then there's a couple vehicles from the National Guard. And they're sitting there. And, we're halfway through. And we're taking a quick bite. We're having a bite. And we're over there talking to them, and they're like, we have no idea what the hell we're supposed to do. We're just kind of here, they're just standing. It's just weird to see military on your streets. So then we go back and we finish it. As we start to finish it, more and more people start to show up, and we realize they want to get in. And they're very polite. It was a very bizarre situation. We're like, are you guys done yet? We're like, no. All right, just let us know when you're done. So we'll wait over here. And then it went from like several people to, we're into the teens to we're into the 50. And then there's about 100 people. They're all mulling around like, I got stuff. Can you hurry it up here? I got things to do. And it was so weird. In fact, one guy rolled up and, we got really spooked because he opened up the back of his trunk, and in his trunk, he took out it was an AK-47. Remember, it was 1992. It wasn't like it is now. But he didn't do anything, shut the door. And we finished getting it up, and we're like, and the guy looks at me and goes, are you done? We said, yeah. And then within 5 minutes, like locusts, just tore the place apart. And within a half an hour, we sat there. We're just eating our lunch because we're getting ready to go to the next place. It was just bizarre to watch the place be torn apart. And and to understand when you do damage like that, especially in cities, it is so sad, especially in areas where they're struggling with all kinds of things, including the fact that in many of these places, they don't have a lot of places to shop. And they just tore apart their own city. And then you started to realize after a couple of days, this was not about stopping it at that moment in time. It was letting it run its steam out. And as it ran its steam out, controlling it and containing it. And it was a sad situation because I grew up in Long Beach and I grew up around all of these areas and some of the, I grew up in the hood especially as a younger kid, and watching some of these places just be torn to hell. And the city essentially going, we give up. We're just going to try to contain everybody, not let it get outside of parts of LA and Linwood and Compton and Watts and South Central and parts of Long Beach. And it was a sad situation. It was. And it's unfortunate because I remember there was a Food for Less that we did, and that place got torched, and that place had been open for less than a week. And it took the mayor, big city officials, and a lot of people coming in to try to get Food for Less to come into the area rather than just have liquor stores and convenience stores. And they did, and it was destroyed within a week. And the CEO was, when he's talking to my mom, was like, we're not going to build again. It was already a lot. We weren't going to make really any money off. We had to have extra security, but we recognized it was a good thing to do. And at that point in time, it was just a frustrating situation. And then when you're driving through areas, and that was the other thing, you're driving through parts of, we're down on MLK, and we're heading in a certain direction because we've got to go do a couple stores, a couple 7-Elevens. And as we're doing that, people are running around. There's chaos, right? And places are on fire. And you see black-owned business, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was a horrible situation. That's not this. This is mostly angrily, well-to-do white kids who are using the opportunity to throw a fit, spurned on by people who are paying them to be agitators, who are coming in from the outside and taking something where people are really concerned and worried and turning it into an issue for them. Absolutely. And finally tonight, Terry Moran of the Fighting Terrys, correspondent and a White House correspondent, by the way, was fired today, 2 days after being suspended by ABC. Now, the reason he was suspended was a tweet he sent out over the weekend that was late night, and it went after Stephen Miller. And it was a pretty brutal takedown of Stephen Miller. Like him, dislike, it doesn't matter. You are a person who, you work for ABC News. You work in particular for the political wing of it, and that includes covering the White House. You have built up a career that on a late night X post, which you deleted, but by then it was too late. And look, I say stupid shit all the time. Doesn't matter. I'm a pundit. That's what I do for a living. I give you my thoughts on stuff. I look at things. You're supposed to be covering the White House. And we can be honest, even if people don't like to. This White House gives as good as it gets, but it's not always been covered fairly. Just like the White House with Trump the first time had some serious issues. And I have issues the way that Trump comes after the media at times, but let's be real. They give as good as they get and vice versa. He tweeted out, essentially, his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate, is what he tweeted out, and that was the big thing. And then he took it away. and now he's gone. And I never wish anybody ill will, but you can't for a second think that you're going to be able to survive something like that as a political reporter that covers politics, mostly the White House news. You just can't. And they thought on it. I'm sure in theory, they probably thought, well, that's your beliefs. When it is what it is. You've got to go. And that was the right thing to do for ABC. And again, I don't wish anybody any ill will because we all make mistakes. But your job is to cover a White House, and it's obvious you could never cover it fairly. You couldn't. And this is what happens. It's free speech. Somebody said, oh, it's free speech. His free speech wasn't taken away. This was the result of his speech that was free. But the result was you can't be a person who covers the White House and or the Trump administration in a fair way. If you look at somebody like Stephen Miller, hate him, like him, whatever, you keep that to yourself and say, you eat hate. You're not going to get a fair shake. The White House wasn't. And so I wasn't surprised by any of this. And I'm surprised it took a couple days. And as our buddy S. Jones Jack said, he's 65. Maybe that was his retirement tweet. I even saw Mark Halperin. He shouldn't have done it, but I'm glad he did. And we know how the media, it's left-leaning. I've worked in many of stations that have newsrooms, and the newsrooms always, for the most part. Now, I've been in several that are very left, but you wouldn't know it because they cover a lot of local stuff they cover. But they cover everything in a fair way, whether they like it or not. But I've also worked in a lot of places where they haven't, and they won't, and there will never be the benefit of the doubt for anybody on the right or any conservative take or even a libertarian conservative take whatsoever. That will never happen. So I've been around the block on more than a few occasions, and this was the right thing for ABC to do, and I'm sure it was tough for them. That's his belief, but you can't have that out in the open. Although I think it's rather easier to have it in the open because at least you know who you're dealing with. As opposed to somebody says, and then goes behind you, stabs you in the back, if you know what I mean. Even if it's not, especially if it's not true. Always fun. Tonight, we'll do it again tomorrow. Tomorrow, my uncle's going to join us, talk more about LA. We'll get his firsthand perspective of him probably having to drive hours to find anything that's going on that's chaotic. We'll talk a bit more about that. You can reach out to us across all of our social media. We love it when you do. It's awesome. And go to chadbensonshow.com. We've got a couple new t-shirts up in there, including an ICE t-shirt that I think you guys will find hilarious. If you want to order that, be cool. 6 to 9 tomorrow Pacific, 9 to noon Eastern in the morning to the midday. Right there for our radio program. Check out the podcast as well. You guys have a blessed rest of your night. And